Special Educators Summer Series Week 5. Welcome back. This is Jennifer from Positively Learning. We are doing this free series all summer long, both on the podcast and at Positively Learning on YouTube. I'm so glad that you're joining in. This is bite-sized PD. We're taking one action step every week and it's building on itself. So you could either follow along week by week, or you could binge listen all at once in August. Each week, we're talking about the tasks framework. We've done T, A, S, and today is K, keeping it organized. The first 3 letters had important questions to use as you're starting to think about your system, what tasks you're going to use, what containers, what materials are students going to have access to. The last 2 letters of the tasks framework is all about your classroom and your students using the system. How are we going to set it up? What visuals are we going to use? What consistent routine are we going to model and show students so everybody's on the same page? Let's kick this training off with a question. Have you ever set up your independent work during back to school? Maybe it was August or September. You actually prepped it all, set it up on a shelf or a cart or bin. You added all the materials. And it might have worked for the first couple of weeks, and then you watched it slowly fall apart by October. If this sounds like you, I want to tell you what I think actually happened there. It wasn't the tasks you chose, and it wasn't your students, and it wasn't all the prep work you've done. You did a lot. What fell apart was the system around the tasks. And I know systems is a buzzword. I've been talking about systems for years, and now everywhere I look, I'm hearing this. It's not the materials, it's the systems. It seems to be the buzzword of 2026. But it is true, and we're going to talk about what that actually means. What fell apart was the system. Maybe the tasks stopped getting rotated and the finished bin might have gotten full and stayed full. The visual schedule, maybe it got moved during a classroom reshuffle and it never went back. The storage system that worked so well in August somehow got disorganized somewhere around week 6 and you don't have time to fix it. And without the system running, the tasks can't run either. That's what I want to talk about and I want to think about as we work through this episode together. The task boxes, file folders, work binders, whatever you're choosing, that's not the system. The task lives inside a system. And when that system is working, everything works. But when the system breaks down, the tasks also break down. Not because there's anything wrong with them and that you didn't choose the right ones, but because they don't have that structure around them that makes them run. So this K step that we're talking about this week is building that structure, not once, not just during back to school, but consistently across the whole school year. But don't worry, we're going to make it very sustainable. There are 5 things a running independent work system thrives on. It really needs. And I'm going to be going through each one, but I do highly recommend you go to YouTube and watch the video because there's visuals. Number 1, a visual schedule. Students need to know the sequence of their work before the work block starts. And even better is if they can know this without asking you. A visual schedule makes that order visible. It might be task boxes arranged from left to right on a table or a shelf, or maybe it's a first then board with 2 items on it and a simple numbered list. The format doesn't matter as much as the fact that it exists and the student can access it without your help. Sequence that lives only in our head, that is not a system. It's information that students don't have access to. Now, quick break. As I go through these 5 things, this doesn't mean you need to go get new things. You might already have a visual schedule. Great, check that off the list. But if you don't, I highly recommend it. The next thing that you want in your independent work system is some type of finished bin or area, some kind of process that is visual. Every completed task needs a physical destination. Maybe it's a labeled bin, a specific folder, a designated spot, somewhere that's not a student's lap or your desk or wherever there's room. And it shouldn't be something that changes from week to week. Done needs to be a place. So without that finished location, students might either hold their completed work, or they wait for you, or they might put it somewhere different every week and you lose track of what got done. The finished bin is what closes that task. It creates that physical done state that we talked about last week, and it frees the student to move on without looking for you or waiting on you. The first two visuals, we talked about a visual schedule. Now we're talking about a finished bin, like a labeled spot. The next is the work system. This is the structure that holds this whole independent work block together. It tells the student, here are the tasks you're doing. This is the order. This is what happens when you finish all of them. A simple version could be 3 tasks arranged left to right, each moved to the finished bin when complete. Maybe there's a preferred activity waiting at the end. A more structured version might be using a numbered schedule card or a basket system with tasks in sequence. The specific format matters less than the fact that the whole work block has a visible beginning, middle, end, and the student can navigate it without asking you at each transition. Okay, we've got 2 more to go. I'm hoping as you're listening to this, it doesn't sound overwhelming. It sounds like things that you can just say, yep, I've got that. Okay, I've got the bin, and you're ready. That's what my hope is. Now let's move on to number 4. The fourth thing that your system needs is some type of task rotation. So tasks need to change on a regular schedule, but that's not every day. And I sometimes think people think it might be. And of course, that's going to get really overwhelming. No, repetition is our friend. We don't want to be switching them every day because our students need predictability. But we also don't want to never switch them because that would create disengagement. A rotation schedule might be weekly or every 2 weeks or tied to mastery. What it doesn't do is stay static until the tasks fall apart from boredom or overuse. When the tasks rotate, they go through the same setup: a clear start, clear work, clear finish. The content is new. The format is familiar. That's how we keep the system fresh without the student having to relearn how independent work works every time something changes. That was my downfall with centers. I was setting up these beautiful stations. They looked so inviting, but they were one size fits all or one size fits no one. And as inviting as they looked, they were often completely different activities. Maybe there were puzzles. Maybe there were clip cards, partner games, reader's theater. They were just different every time. So my students were always depending on me to give directions, to show them how it works, to repeat directions. And I was always wondering, why can't my students work independently? When you're using this type of independent work system with a task rotation, you're keeping that format familiar, but it's still engaging because the content is new. The last piece of this independent work system to keep it all organized with visuals is a storage system. This is the infrastructure that makes everything else sustainable. Tasks need a home when they're not in the rotation. Labeled bins, organized shelves if you have them, a consistent place for pieces so nothing gets lost. If you have a storage system that's organized, that means you can pull out a new task and add it to the rotation. If you have a storage system that looks like a pile of task boxes, no judgment there. It makes it really hard to keep up with a rotation because it's so much work just to find what you need. The storage doesn't have to be glamorous, but it's what makes the whole system manageable across the year, not just across August and September. Let's quickly recap those 5 things every independent work system needs. We need some type of visual schedule so students know what they're working on. We need a finished bin. Done is a location. We need a work system that holds that independent work block together. We need the task rotation, not every day, but on a consistent schedule. And we need some type of storage system so that you can find what you need. There's one more thing I want to add to this, and this is not going to apply to everyone who's listening, but I want to talk about something that does come up a lot in classrooms, and it just doesn't get enough attention in conversations when we're talking about independent work systems. It's paraprofessionals. or support staff, one-on-ones, volunteers, anybody in the classroom that's working with you. Many teachers do have someone else in the classroom. And one of the most consistent frustrations that I hear is that independent work can fall apart because someone else is managing it. Not because they're bad at what they do, but because the system wasn't built to run without you. When the only person who knows the routine is you, that system is going to be very fragile. It's very wobbly. When you're out sick or when you're in a meeting or you're working one-on-one with a student on the other side of the room, you do not want your system to come to a screeching halt. This step, the K step in the tasks framework, can solve this. The visual schedule that's there for the student can also be there for all of the adults in the classroom. If the finish bin is labeled and the work sequence is clear, another adult doesn't need to already have the routine memorized. The environment is going to show them what the routine is. And this is not about removing all adults from the independent work system, but it is about making the system student-led and accessible to everyone. When you build up this K step in the tasks framework well, the room can run with anyone. Student teacher, classroom aide who started 2 weeks ago, paraprofessionals, anybody who's in your classroom. And that is not a small thing. That is the difference between a system and a routine that depends entirely on one person, which is you. I want to close with something very practical because 5 system components can feel like 5 new things you have to do. But I want you to know you do not have to build all 5 things we talked about today at the same time. Just find one that's most clearly missing and add that one first. If your students don't know how many tasks they're doing during independent work, the work system should be the first thing we focus on. If completed tasks pile up on desks and tables and floors and they start to create chaos, the finished bin is the first thing you should do. If students are always asking, what comes next? Visual schedule is your first addition. And if you haven't rotated tasks in over 6 weeks, the storage and rotation system is probably where you should start. Pick one component, build it well, run it consistently. That is more valuable than getting all 5 components that are half set up. Next week, we're talking about the second S, showing students the system. We've built the system now. Now we're going to talk about how to actually hand it over to students, how to teach independence, how to practice it, how to step back when they're ready. I can't wait to hear how it's going for you. Be sure to follow along on YouTube. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll catch you next time in the Special Educators Resource Room. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm dying to ask, what'd you think? Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. You can find the show notes and links for everything mentioned in this episode at positivelylearningblog.com. See you next week for more special education solutions.